All right, so this is a zero waste Dutchess meeting. I'm Joel Tyner, former county legislator, and we're kind of working up to Neil Seldman being in Dutchess County next week, and a lot of things going on. My mom's doing it for him next week, and all sorts of fun, exciting stuff. Neil Seldman, the founder of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. He's with Zero Waste USA. He's been on all sorts of national TV and radio, written for New York Times, Washington Post for literally decades. Manna Greene, Ulster County Legislator extraordinaire, longtime former environmental director for Hudson River Sloop Clearwater. My mom, Judy Malstrom, who's running and the executive director of Zero Waste Dutchess, longtime environmentalist Doreen Tignanelli of the town of Poughkeepsie, and Dave Heller, founder of rankedchoiceny.org. So just real quick, my mom, who's been working for the town of Clinton government there for a couple decades, has set it up so that Neil is actually going to be speaking with Clinton Town Board members during and or after the Clinton Town Board meeting next Tuesday night, which is really cool. And then on Thursday, she has something special going on at Clinton Town Hall Thursday, August 15th, she'll be telling you about. And then I guess September 13th, Friday afternoon, will be a proper evening forum, perhaps with Neil at Clinton Town Hall. Neil's been working with municipalities, successfully moving them towards zero waste all across the country for a long time. There's a lot of great examples across the country. Ulster County is doing a fine job in a lot of ways, and so is Warren County. And that's one of the reasons why Neil's in New York a lot, because he's working with Warren County, which is in like Glens Falls land, hour or two north of Albany. If it's okay with everybody, Mom, why don't you go first, just for a little bit, and then Neil, and then Manna and Doreen and Dave. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. So here I go echoing. Well, Joel, you actually told everything, so I don't know what I
Sorry.
I know that Neil is coming in to do an interview with Mothers Out Front, which is a Poughkeepsie group, and so I thought that it would be nice or workable maybe if he could come to the town of Clinton later in the day, and that's meeting night, town board meeting. So we can't schedule him to be part of the meeting, but he can actually talk for a few minutes at the public, at the public thing at the public speaking time, which is not at the end of it's at the end of the meeting, but it's still within the meeting. So it's still, and that's being recorded and sent to a lot of people. So it'd be a really good thing for that to be that happen. I hope it does. And then on that following Friday, on the 15th, following Thursday, I plan to have from 2 to 4 at the town hall a display of zero waste information, to hope that people will stop by and ask me questions and look at what I've got and maybe get interested. I was really happy that the town clerk offered to, without, I didn't ask her, Joel, she offered to, do a little poster for me. So I think you have been, I think Joel is sending them out so you can see them. It was delightful.
This is the longtime Republican conservative town clerk of the town of Clinton for
who I
decades.
ran against to be the town clerk, and we have been at loggerheads for many years after that.
Carol Dean Mackin, God bless her soul, now
Yeah.
pro zero waste.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it's been a kind of like turnaround. So we're all working together, and I've got a lot of people on what's called the Climate Smart Task Force Committee. And every town may have one. I'm not sure, But if your town doesn't have one, maybe you should talk to the CAC because it's an offshoot of that and try and get one going because one of the members on the uh, CSC, it's called now, um, moved. He sold his house in the town of Clinton and he bought a house or is building a house in Millerton, which is in the town of Northeast. And I asked him, he came to a meeting. I asked him what if they had a uh, a CSC meeting, and they have a very active one. So there's a connection already with another town that I hope to pull in when Neil comes on Friday the 13th in September. That's when it's a night meeting and it's a Friday, and I'm hoping to get a lot of the surrounding towns sending people, especially in the north here, in northern Dutchess, which I understand the Northern Dutchess Alliance is with about 6 or 7 towns involved, are kind of like quiet and not doing anything. Something maybe COVID stopped them. Not sure. Things have not really resurrected, but this may be an idea that sparks some interest. And I'm hoping to contact everybody and get them here. Um, but uh, it's looking really good. I've joined the CSC actually, and at the behest of one of the town board members. And um, the thing about this committee is that it is a way of getting funds from the county, from the state, and from the government, and they all kind of require certain things to happen before they give the money. One of them is to um, to gather points, and the town CSC meeting that has been going on for 2 years now has gathered enough points to get to the bronze status. Bronze status, should they actually win it and get it, they are then eligible for like a $40,000 grant of some sort to do things. And it turns out that zero waste programs can gather points. So that was really good news. It means that the CSC will get involved, I think, with the zero waste programs. So I think looks really good. I don't like to think, yeah, that I'm a pessimist in a lot of ways, but it really is falling into place. A lot of the board members are interested, and hey, we'll see what happens. So that's about it. I have some questions for Neil when he gets on, but I'll break in then and echo my comments.
That's my mom. Kicking butt and
Kicking butt and
teams there in the town of Clinton in bipartisan fashion. On to you, Neil, and then Manna and the rest of us.
Sure. It's great to see everybody. And perhaps we'll get to see each other on August 24th in Kingston. Some of you may know that Rebecca Martin is having a afternoon evening get together at her house in Kingston. I'll put the details in the chat in a few minutes. So I'll be coming back then. But the first time I'll be back, I'm in Chestertown now, but I go home Sunday, and I'll come back on the 13th, as Judy mentioned. I have a taping a show with Mothers Out Front for the program called The Blue Planet, and that's in the morning, and then in the evening, as Judy mentioned, I'll be in Clinton Corners talking to officials in that town. And among the things I'll be talking about are the types of jobs, good jobs, that would be created if the county and the town focused on zero waste programs and transitioned out of the incinerator. I could give you some of that information now, but I wanted to talk about a few other things that I'm doing that are pertinent. First of all, I'm so happy to be working in New York again. I'm working, as Joel said, in Warren County and Albany City and County, Dutchess County, and it really is a pleasure to be back home. Um, the other thing I want to mention, which I think is important, is that last week, Mike Ewall from Energy Justice Network, and I'm now happy to let you know that I'm on the board of directors of EJN, and I'm working closely with Mike. We worked close together beforehand, so we continue to work well together. And it was a tour de force on incineration, garbage incineration, and the recording is available. If I don't put it in the chat now, I'll make sure that Judy and Joel get the URL. And it's about an hour and 10, an hour and 15 minutes, and it's an encyclopedic approach to the choices between incineration and non-incineration solid waste management opportunities. And Mike is giving another talk this week, no, next week, and I'll certainly make sure that the URL for the second presentation, and the second presentation by Mike is going to be on how the media distorts and basically disenfranchises people fighting against incinerators. And I want to give a plug to Jill, who runs Greene Education, Greene Education, and she is sponsoring these webinars, or basically lectures with questions and answers from Mike. As everybody knows, organic material is about 1/3 of the waste stream. And I am in the middle of researching an article, and I'll give you some more details in a moment. The article is about what happened in the United States in the late 60s, 69, 70, and throughout the 70s, how citizens rose up, independent citizens, ad hoc, spontaneous citizens, started recycling centers all across the country. There was a great event called the Survival Walk, where activists marched from San Diego to Sacramento in protest of the Vietnam War, the damaging to the environment, and the growth of garbage and waste in the United States. And every night where they stopped on their walk, they camped out and they left behind a recycling center. They separated their materials and left them neatly, and those became drop-off centers throughout the state. And within the next few years, small companies, some citizen-based, some for-profit, started collecting recyclables from curbside. And this spontaneous movement in the 70s resulted in that by the 80s, just about every city had their own curbside recycling program. Well, that same excitement, by the way, our motto back then was just do it. You may recognize that from one of the big sneaker people, I forget which one. They grabbed the name and incorporated it, or what do you call it? Copywrote it. But it started with recycling. Just do it. Start recycling and good things will happen. And in my assessment of the sociology of that movement is that people wanted to do something. Even recycling your glass and paper, etc. It was something to do, akin to the World War II effort, when there were paper drives and metal drives and fat drives, cooking fat, which was an ingredient in making munitions. It was an important psychological thing during World War II that people felt was their obligation on the home front while their brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, and so forth were fighting a war. Well, after World War II, that ended very quickly. And what happened in the 1969, early 70s was a revitalization of that recycling spirit in the United States. This time, the war against environmental degradation, ecological collapse, etc. And it was it was and still is a very important part of the recycling movement. I wrote about this, and I'll send you the articles. I won't go into detail, but the recycling movement was joined by the anti-incineration movement when that came in the 80s and 90s. And finally, it was all joined together in the zero waste movement, starting in 1995. And we're all in the middle of that fight right now. So what I'm writing about is how what's going on right now in composting is the exact same thing that happened for the recycling movement. They're running exactly parallel, and I anticipate that the energy that's moving from the grassroots up. This is grassroots people starting recycling, which I'm going to emphasize in my article, and the policy decision makers follow. Just as they followed in recycling, they're following in composting. And I've got lined up interviews with groups in Detroit, Montana, Los Angeles, Westchester, close to where we are, where Poughkeepsie is, where Dutchess County is. Warren County is starting composting. Baltimore, the citizens are just desperate, and the city keeps on taking money out of their budget. I'll be going into that as well. And let's see. Oh, and of course, I'll be interviewing Manna Joe, who's with us tonight, on what's going on in composting with Ulster, because they are a worthy model for all counties to look at. And basically what's happening is that citizens are demanding that counties build public facilities so that municipalities, when they start there, either drop off, which it usually starts as drop off and then expands to curbside, so that when the town of Yonkers or in Westchester or the town of Poughkeepsie or Clinton Corners in Dutchess County, when they start composting, which they inevitably will because of the demand of people, and not only the demand, but the activism of people that are starting programs. And this is happening. I will also be, I don't know if I mentioned Westchester County, where the group Westchester Alliance for Sustainable Solutions has engaged the person, Travis Carpenter, to focus on building the Westchester composting network, again, from the ground up. I can't emphasize that enough. So that article will, I don't want to give myself a deadline, but I'll be working on it starting, my vacation ends on Sunday. So I'll be starting shortly after that, except for traveling back and forth to Poughkeepsie and Clinton Corners. I'll be working on that. And of course, I'll be sharing it with people. The last two articles I wrote, which I'll also put in the chat, deal with this history, bringing us up to date. And the second article that I'm working on, this would be the fourth in the series, is an article about what happened in San Diego in 1989, 90, 91. And in 88, 89, I was involved in stopping incinerators, planned incinerators in San Diego City and San Marcos, California, which is in the top northern part of San Diego County. San Diego County is a very big county, about 9 million people. And 2 incinerators were stopped within 6 months of each other. And at that point, a friend of mine named Richard V. Anthony, Rick Anthony, who was my mentor, when I got the Institute for Local Self-Reliance started, the Waste to Wealth Initiative, I went out to California to learn what was going on, and Rick took me under his wing, and we've been working together ever since. Well, Rick became the solid waste management coordinator for San Diego County. And he was told, stop waste from going into our landfill, the public landfill. And here's what he did. He set a $1 surcharge for every ton of garbage going into the landfill. You had to pay an extra buck. And that dollar created a fund that capitalized the recycling infrastructure, the equipment, the trucks, the training of the local officials, the bureaucrats, public servants to run the system. And so, in other words, the wasters were creating the capital to invest in the new system. Well, over 3 years, the flow to the San Diego landfill dropped by 50%. And the other part of the restrictions that Rick imposed, you could not bring organic material, recyclable material, or reusable products into the landfill. And that system, plus the surcharge, started this is 89, 90, 91, started San Diego County on the road to zero waste before the concept of zero waste actually came to the United States. The idea was started in New Zealand and Australia in the early 90s, and it came to United States through the work of Dan Knapp, Urban Ore, in Berkeley, California. So I'm very optimistic about what's happening, but my articles also deal with the threats that people still want to build incinerators. They still want to extend the life of incinerators long beyond what is it called? The shelf life date. The shelf life is about 25 years. They're pushing incinerators for 33 and 38 years. I forget exactly how old the one in Poughkeepsie was. I know the one in Peekskill has got to be close to 40 years. I would imagine the one that you're operating in Poughkeepsie is about 30 years at this point. And of course, they want to continue doing it. And there's a lot of pressure. There's a pressure on Congress to declare garbage incineration not incineration. There's a pressure on EPA to declare that incinerating garbage is better than landfilling it. Both of those issues, Mike Ewald is remarkably articulate in showing the hypocrisy and also the strategy for stopping these actions. And these actions are important because 25 states have already agreed to issue bonds for these new incinerators. All the while, not one new incinerator has been built in the United States since 1995. Several have been expanded, but no new ones have been built, thanks to people like us who are mobilized. And as Mike Ewald said, and I would underscore, it's virtually impossible to build a new incinerator in this country at this time, given the level of sophistication of the citizens, the data that's available, both financial as well as environmental. We all know that the environmental dangers are very real. Lead, cadmium, mercury, these are killers, and they're being put out into the air in the, tons per year at a time. And of course, no one even knows what the cumulative impact of these are. So, it's particulate matter in particular is dangerous because it's laden with all these chemicals that are a direct threat to our bodies, etc. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And the last thing I will end with is kind of a negative, but also it has a positive. And the negative is I got a report this week. I forget exactly where I read it, but I will find it and send it to Joel and Judy to distribute, that the Washington County incinerator that's in, is it Hudson? It's in Hudson Falls or Fort Edward, right around there in New York State. And people know that Tracy Frisch lives in Washington County, and she's been fighting that incinerator. But the bad news is that researchers have found that Washington County's incinerator is the dirtiest of all the incinerators in New York State. And New York State, unfortunately, our home state, is the leading has the leading number of incinerators. Florida is next, and then I think Minnesota is third. So that's bad news that that Hudson Falls incinerator is kicking out a lot of things that are harming us and harming the whole environment. People may know, I'm sure you do, that it's not just breathing this material, but these pollutants fall on grass that cows eat, on food, on crops that we grow and eat. So there are several avenues of ingestion and inhalation that invade our bodies. So the good news is that this is just another. It's not a red flag; it's a burning bush that we have to confront our officials with and tell them to stop this suicide. And one last thing and one last plug for Mike Ewald's talk, because I think after you see his talk, the first one at least, we'll see the second one next week, or I'll get you the exact date. It's not this week, it's next week. I challenge, what I suggested to anyone in our movement to stop incineration, to challenge your local officials, your town officials, your county officials, and your federal officials in Congress, in the House and Senate, to watch Mike's presentation on incineration and then challenge them to publicly say they want more incineration in their community. I think what Mike did, I used the term before, tour de force. He covered every issue, he covered it thoroughly. And then there was about half an hour of questioning of Mike, which he elucidated further answers. It's all on tape. And of course, his second one will be on tape as well. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure it's going to be as informative and insightful as the others. And finally, about all these presentations, Jill at Greene Education has invited me to give a talk in the style of Mike. It'll probably happen in September, on basically the capitalism of the incineration industry and the landfill industry, how the money flows. If you will, I'm not comparing myself to Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, but they did the same thing. In the 1840s, they saw this phenomenon of capitalism in its raw, tooth and claw nature. And they spent 30 years writing Das Kapital, just explaining how depreciation works and how the money flows and how information flows in between businesses and how the workers are stratified and how the owners of the mills capitalize on the stratification, etc. And what I hope to do in the talk that Jill has invited me to do again in September is to lay out why we're in the situation we're in. And that is because, as Dylan said, the pumps don't work because the vandals have the handles. Well, my version of that is recycling and composting aren't the dominant theme in solid waste management because of the monopolies. The monopolies don't want it and Wall Street doesn't want it. So I'll be explaining that. And finally, I will be explaining, in my opinion, how we can reverse the capital flow. There are very specific mechanisms, first of all, on how to change the capital flow from extraction and oil and gas to renewables in the economy in general. I'll mention those. I'm not an expert on those. I just want to mention them. And then I go into the exact steps that cities and counties can take to make sure that capital flows into the recyclers and away from the wasters. So a lot of work coming up in September and October, and happily I'll be sharing it and living it with you folks in Dutchess, Albany, Warren County, and I certainly look forward to that.
Neil, thank you. I was listening and doing a little bit of multitasking here.
Well, will I be able to give Sequoia a quiz on what I just said?
Definitely. He was totally 100% And after Manna, you go. If we get Manna, Neil, could you just talk for 5 minutes about the Warren County thing and how it might be possible for town of Clinton or Dutchess County? But I want to let Manna. It's 5:35. Manna talk for however long, and then back to you just on the Warren County thing for 5 minutes, and then Dave and my mom and Doreen. Anyway, on to Manna Jo Greene, former longtime environmental director for Hudson River Slough Clearwater, longtime, many times elected member of the Ulster County Legislature representing Rosendale, and still in office. I jujuled it. I'm 2,500 miles away here in Oregon. Manna, how's it going?
It's going great. I just want to say a couple things to bounce off what Neil said. I started with Judith Enck in Work on Waste back in those days.
Yep.
I was a critical care nurse at Benedictine Hospital locally, and but I cared about what people would be breathing if an incinerator, and actually can take credit for stopping the incinerator that Malcolm Perney would have proposed in Ulster County. And I found myself actually becoming the Ulster County Recycling Coordinator for 10.5 years. But I also want to give credit to Toshi Seeger, who did it. She just did it at Revival. And that's where, as a litter picker at Revival, I learned that, yes, you can separate your bottles and cans and paper, and you can compost your food waste. And her positive attitude just radiated out amongst those activists that Neil was referring to. And now to bring us up to the present, and I was just at a meeting where we delivered an Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency Reform Committee report, which basically says to maximize waste diversion, and that includes composting. A few years ago, we passed a food waste prevention and reduction law, which says that anyone who generates more than half a ton of food waste a week must compost it, either themselves or send it to a hauler that'll bring it to a composting facility. The problem is that law has not been properly brought forward. For example, to have a food waste composting expo where you showcased what SUNY New Paltz, what Mohawk Mountain House, what Frost Valley YMCA, and so many others are doing successfully, and also have the vendors there so the businesses can connect and move their food waste or compost it on site. But we are addressing that both from education and enforcement. You know, that in terms of incineration, that report talks about maximizing waste diversion, including removing the goal for the county is 100% of food waste and other organics. So composting, we also worked with Mike Ewall, a group of us as volunteers put together a zero waste implementation plan, and then asked Mike to take it to the next level, which he did, but it's still only maybe 80% done, and there's still some more work that has to be done. So one of the recommendations in the report is to finish that zero waste implementation plan, or moving towards zero waste. And also there was a feasibility study for a reuse innovation center where all the towns would encourage reduction, but then also collect things that are reusable that would go to a center to get repaired and distributed at very low cost. And that would also be a training center to create jobs. Right now, the Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency is managing, I don't want to get the number wrong, but 3/4 of the food wasted ultimately will be processing when the law is fully implemented, which I think is 10,000 tons of material diverted. We also want to be sure that sheetrock is recycled, because sheetrock, when it decomposes in a landfill, gives off that hydrogen sulfide odor. And be sure that we have really good diversion of household and business hazardous waste. So if you remove the odors, you remove the toxicity, and you do massive waste diversion, then a landfill can be smaller and much less onerous. And we're also proposing a very fair host community benefit. Now, I've been saying this for 30 years. I would like to see it happen in my lifetime. But that's where we're at in Ulster County. We have mandatory recycling at the state and at the county level. The same thing with composting. There's a statewide food waste composting law, and we were in direct touch with DEC while we were developing ours, which is a little more comprehensive, because they let schools and healthcare facilities, excuse me, they exempt it. They let them off the hook. Must have breathed in some pepper or something. Anyway, so we have those, and the one thing I'm a little concerned about, the report advises against incineration. It opposes incineration. It's very clear about that. But it does allow for the agency to explore advanced technologies. And I'm concerned about that. And even if there was, for example, a combination of composting, organics, not the food waste, that's high quality, but other organic soiled paper and so forth, with sewage sludge, no matter what you do, there's still going to be residual. So we have to have a landfill. My concern is that in the document, it leaves a little wiggle room for these advanced technologies. So instead of incineration, that could be pyrolysis. And the other concern I have is that the minority leader of the legislature went to Sullivan County and offered, without any he was not empowered to do this. He did this on his own, but he offered support for the Sullivan County incinerator, thinking that we should partner and put the landfill on the border of Sullivan and Ulster County, out the far side of the west side of Ellenville, Warsing, that area, and send our waste to their incinerator. So he's pushing for incineration, even though that is not recommended in the report that was presented to the Energy, Environment, and Sustainability Committee tonight. And the last thing I want to say is that this same pattern that Neil described is happening, and maybe even more so, with nuclear power. And nuclear is absolutely not a climate solution. Real climate solutions are not radioactive, and it's a very dangerous trend. And I don't want to sidetrack the conversation, but there's something that just passed called the Advanced Act that is having the NRC, instead of regulating nuclear power, promoting it, and it goes on and on. But it's the same process. The money, all those subsidies are going to incineration, and they're going to nuclear power because the propaganda is that we need nuclear to address climate change, and that's absolutely not true. But follow the money, and they get all the money, and we scramble. We volunteers, including, I want to acknowledge Doreen and Judy, who I've worked with off and on for years. And we scramble to get the right information out and to stop these foolhardy and very dangerous projects. So with that, I pass it back, and love to Sierra. She's such a sweetheart. Please give her a hug for me. Hi,
Oh,
Sierra.
she's giving you a hug. We're in town just every December. We'll try to look you up when we're back. It's funny, I just did some jujuling, and a couple weeks ago, the River Reporter did an article on how Sullivan County considers waste to energy system, and they toured the ReWorld incinerator plant on Long Island, and the county manager is talking about, oh, we ship 100,000 tons of MSW 200 miles away to Seneca Meadows landfill in the Finger Lakes, costs us $95 a ton. So taxpayers and waste haulers are collectively paying $10 million a year. And they refer to Poughkeepsie, who's the county manager, refers to incineration as clean burning trash. So,
oh, yes, it's come a long way. Now, that's what they say. It's not like the old incinerators. It's got filters and scrubbers.
The interesting thing, even this article points out something that Mike and I think Neil have pointed out, that the incinerator produces ash and bricks. Anyway, Manna, thank you tons for all that, and thank you for being a good example for Dutchess County. The law that you guys passed in 2019 may not be perfect, and it may not be perfectly being implemented right now, but it's still about 3 billion light years ahead of Dutchess County, as far as my eyes can see from here in Oregon. Doreen, you said you wanted to say a few minutes, and then Neil, if you could talk for a few minutes about, at least a few minutes about how Warren County may provide an example. Anyway, go ahead, Doreen, hit it.
Okay. Well, I just signed a petition to Governor Hochul, urging her to sign the expanded food scrap recycling and food donation program legislation into law. And like basically right now, where it says that facilities that generate 1 or more ton of food waste per week have to apply, have to bring it to food scrap generators within 50 miles of an organics recycler. Right now it's 25 miles, and now it'll be 50 miles. They're hoping that would capture more wasted food. So, and you know, that whole thing about wasted food is just, it's a hard concept for me to grasp, you know, that people waste like a third of the food that is produced, because, you know, that isn't something that happens in our household. I wasn't raised that way. My husband wasn't either. So when you think about all the food that's wasted, that's, you know, on so many levels, that's really a shame. And then the other thing is that I was reading an article where Columbia County has an aerobic composter digester that they say reduces 100 pounds of food waste to as little as 10 pounds. And then they talk about all the amount of CO2 each week that's eliminated by using that. So they say that the average of 1,000 pounds of food scraps per week that go through this composter eliminates 2.59 tons of CO2 each week. And plus that, reduces the food scraps that otherwise would end up in a landfill. So I don't know, who's looking into that, who uses it, if it really is as, a good idea, but that sounded like something that, was of interest. So.
Doreen, I could respond to that. It's probably an anaerobic digester,
Yeah.
which is a very valid technology. It captures methane from organics. It doesn't. It wants food scraps, clean food scraps. It doesn't want yard debris, which is also organic, but has much less ingredients, if you will, that give
Yeah,
off.
it does. Just, I wasn't sure if I was clear on that, but Neil, but yeah, it does say it converts food waste.
Yeah, and the technology is proven, and it could be a small scale system, 5,000 tons a year for a school system, let's say, or a small city. And in the Washington D.C. area, it's there's a plant that just went online that's 120,000 tons per year. So the technology is there. There are trade-offs between composting and digesting, which we don't have to get into, but technicians can balance that out and what's the best for your community. In most cases, it's capital versus land, and that's a decision that can be made and calculated. But before we go on to Dave, I want to address something that Manna Jo brought up. That I believe she said that in her county, the Ulster people aren't looking at incineration, but they're looking at new technologies. Well, she is correct to be worried about new technologies because these are the technologies that the industry is trying to get EPA to approve. Pyrolysis, gasification, there are a whole number of names for them. And as Mike can say, and I could send you articles, it just doesn't work. There have been technical failures, there have been financial failures, and the fact that they push and push, it's because these corporations, one, they want to make money and they want to issue bonds from Wall Street, all that stuff. But for a society, for an economy that doesn't want to stop wasting, you need a mass solution. You need a mega landfill. You need a big incinerator. You need something at the end, because if the stuff backs up, people are going to get angry. And I think people are pretty angry at this point, and that people are fighting it. And there are other aspects to it. Our friend in Warren County, a great organizer, Tracy Frisch, has become an expert on PFAS, the forever chemicals, chemical soup that are in many of our household products, etc. And these are contaminants that are spread when you incinerate, along with all the other acid gases and elements. Let me say a word about Warren County. Also, Tracy Frisch works on Zero Waste Warren. I work with them. We had a meeting up here last week. And I also want to plug the Lake George Mirror, which is a locally owned independent newspaper that is covering these issues. They're covering the composting issue and they're covering the recycling issue. And I've reported a couple of times before on the recycling issue. I'll be happy to give a refresher. But bottom line is that zero waste people have convinced the county to change their recycling system from single stream to dual stream, which will save about $200,000 a year countywide. But there's also movement on composting because, again, Zero Waste Warren and others have convinced the county that they need to build a public compost facility for the county, for the towns in the county to use. And the article, if you go look up the Lake George Mirror, which I think it's information at lakegeorgemirror.com. I'm sure you could find it on the internet. Their latest article, which is only about a week old, focuses on what's going on with composting, and that the county has put together a plan. I believe the total capital is about $1.5 million. There's some matching funds, and they're applying to a state and federal programs to finance a municipal composting facility where all the towns in Warren County can send their source separated organic waste. Many of you know Warren County well. It's a very, very conservative place. My wife and I have been living here in the summers for many, many years. We've got a lot of wonderful friends here, but it's a very conservative part of the county, part of the state, as is Washington County, where Tracy Frisch lives and is working against that incinerator. But common sense has prevailed. The county is moving in the right direction. The recycling coordinator meets every month with Zero Waste Warren to give updates and get feedback. It's a very rewarding interchange of information. Things happen as a result of the meetings, so it's very encouraging. And in fact, the title of the article I wrote about it was that Warren County is an example of how organized citizens can work with county officials to change things, and it's very heartening. They did not need a political revolution to do it. I like to think that hard work at the local level organizing, plus common sense, has prevailed, and hopefully it will prevail more and more in the counties that we work and live in.
Amen, amen, sir. Well put. I wanted to ask Doreen to possibly, if you could, Doreen, put in the chat I know you put the bill number, the expanded food scrap recycling and food donation program, Senate Bill 5331A, Assembly Bill 5906A. But if there's a link to that petition, I would love it, and also that article about the Columbia County anaerobic digester. But also, before we get to Dave and circle around to everybody else, I always learn something on these things. Neil, you're telling me that the EPA has yet to approve pyrolysis and gasification?
As of Mike's webinar last week, gasification and pyrolysis are still categorized as incineration. The industry is trying to get them declared power plants, which would exempt them from the emissions controls on a solid waste management incinerator. And the other thing, at this point we're safe. Of course, you're never really safe because lobbying goes on and on. They don't die on their own. They have to be. What is it with Dracula? You have to drive a wooden stake in their heart to make sure the incinerators don't come back. And the other element is the hierarchy, the EPA hierarchy. For decades, they had a hierarchy: recycling, reduce is best, then recycling, compost, and then they had incineration and then landfill. And Mike has provided overwhelming evidence showing that incinerating waste is far worse in many, many ways, pollution-wise, than landfilling. And of course, landfilling, we can control the emissions if you don't put organic material in landfill to begin with. When you compost it or digest it, as we were talking about in Columbia County. Right now, EPA has admitted, again, thanks to Mike's persistence, that they have no data to support their claim that incineration is better than landfill. And they are doing the research or getting the documentation, which Mike has in great part provided, to make that official. Right now, if you go to their webpage and look at their hierarchy, you can see that they have a little note indicating that they have no backup data for their claim that incinerators are better than landfills. So Mike thinks that the official change may take anywhere from 6 to 18 months, but we're hopeful that soon, as soon as possible, the EPA finally revises its hierarchy. And we also hope that they stick to their guns and do not allow these new type of incinerators to skate under the air emissions requirements, control requirements for incineration.
I'll wipe that mess up. Neil, thank you. Thank you. Dave, rankedchoiceny.org founder, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
What's on your mind?
Yeah, every time I go to the store, I'm like appalled at how hard it is to avoid, unwanted packaging. But I'm gonna be a little controversial here because I got surrogate gardens, and this is today's haul.
Nice.
We use biochar, put biochar in the garden, and like we're getting these gigantic, huge tomatoes. And anyway,
Dave, we're gonna have to excommunicate you because you said the B word, Dave.
Give him a waiver, please.
Heretic, I cast thee out.
Anyway, yeah, and my neighbors where that garden is also have pigs, and so they are my biodigesters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Do they, if you give them your food scraps as a feed, do they give you some bacon at the end of the year?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what their ultimate destiny is, but so the wife is a big animal lover and the husband is a big bacon lover. I don't know what's going to happen.
What a combination.
But I do bring my watermelon rinds and pineapple rinds and other scraps over there that they completely enjoy.
Well, up until the late 50s, the city of Philadelphia had a contract with the hog farmers in New Jersey, who sent in food scraps were collected separately, and the hog farmers sent their own trucks, picked it up, and brought it back for hog feeding, as you just pointed out.
Yeah, I might also add more controversy because biochar, when you mix it with animal waste, is incredibly good for soil amendments. A lot of biology in it.
Does it depend on how that biochar is made, as far as how environmentally sound or unsound it is?
Just so you know, when you make biochar, that takes for every pound of biochar you make, it takes 2 pounds of carbon out of the air. And it makes trees and other plants grow like 10%, 15% faster.
But
So
you make biochar basically by burning something, right?
pyrolysis, another word that we used earlier.
All right, Mom.
It's
Save me,
not
Mom.
burning.
Well, the way I see it is Dave is doing something on a very small scale. I don't think he's for a very giant pyrolysis system. I don't know. Are you, Dave? Are you?
Well,
let me put it this way, Dave. you don't burn plastic.
No, that's right.
So in my simplified version of things, the reason why industry is pushing pyrolysis is they want to keep making plastic.
Right.
And they need a mass solution for the mass of plastic waste that we all see every day in our lives, in the supermarket, at home, whatever. So I think biochar of organic matter is just a completely different animal than a
Thank you.
pyrolysis plant that burns mixed garbage with metal thrown in and chemicals and tires and rugs and carpeting. It's not the same thing. I'm sure Dave is not putting that stuff and getting those tomatoes that look that well grown.
Well, is that a fact?
Right, right. Wait a minute,
Wall
wait a
on
minute.
speed dial right now,
Joel,
and I'm getting Mikey Wall
Joel,
on dial.
Joel, I think the problem is none of us want to give the power to the group who is proponents of pyrolysis, because they're the ones who are going to not use organic stuff. They're the ones who are going to burn the plastic, and it's something that we can't trust them. We can't trust them with this type of incineration. That's the real truth of it. They can't be trusted. Period.
Absolutely.
We know that they're going to be abusing that in the worst possible way, and that's why we have to say no to the large part of that huge system. Period.
I just have one more thing to add. We can keep on going for however long you guys want. I think, Neil, you educated me about a decade or so about how moving towards zero waste with recycling and composting instead of landfilling or incineration is also like an innovative way to do economic development, creating at least 10 times more jobs. The meeting's almost done, honey. At least 10 times more jobs than
Well,
recall that last year we did, or earlier this year, maybe it's earlier this year, we did the thing with or last year with Michael Schumann, and
yes,
because Doreen Tignanelli and her husband have extensively, exhaustively, comprehensively documented the corporate welfare that goes on almost monthly through the Dutchess County government's corporate welfare system, which is basically Dutchess County Industrial Development Agency, the Dutchess County Economic Development Corporation, and the Dutchess County Local Development Corporation, and Think Dutchess. And so can we just have a show of hands here if everybody thinks that Doreen should resume those monthly email updates to me that scoped out and described and reported in journalized detail what she was finding out every month at those meetings with Jim. All right. Thank you. She says that I can do, because I missed those reports, because that was one of the, I think that was the meeting is almost done, but I think maybe Grandma Maui may have something to say. Maybe Grandpa Neil may have something to say. Maybe Grandma Manna. Oh, you have something to say? Okay. Oh, huggies. Oh, huggies and kisses. Wow. Love. We can't have a movement without love. I should just end it right there, but does anybody else have any? As they say here in the West Coast, for the good of the order, is there anything else for the good of the order?
I just want to let you know, Joel, you mentioned job creation. When I come up with my presentation, I guess next week, I will be presenting on the potential job creation in Poughkeepsie County, in Dutchess County, if they go to zero waste. And it's an impressive number. It'll take me a few minutes, so I'm going to email it to you, Joel. I think I have everyone else's email. If not, Joel, you could distribute it. And basically, this is my presentation for working with Judy in Clinton Corners and Doreen on that Blue Planet presentation. So I'll put that to you in an email.
Excellent, sir. I really appreciate. I don't know if you guys have missed me over the last month. My Zoom subscription lapsed. I had to re-up on Zoom, but I've missed you all dearly. Manna, Mom, Doreen, Dave, anything else for the good of the order or the bad of the order?
I will send the report that I described to you, Joel, to share with everyone, the Ulster County Reform Committee report.
Manna, thank you so much. There isn't any chance that you could send it like as a MS Word document or text, like not as a PDF, so I can like copy and paste from it, or if it's just a PDF, I'll deal with it. Or if it's on a website.
You know what? I will send a link so that you can get to it'll probably be a Word doc, but I'll also send the PDF so everybody can open it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Manna, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh, my pleasure, and good to see everyone. And Neil, thank you for a lifetime. I just have to tell folks, one time I introduced Neil as the Dr. Martin Luther King of zero waste, of waste management.
I continue to try to live up to that wonderful accolade. I do remember it.
Yes, indeed. Wonderful. Okay, thank you all. And just remember that real climate solutions are not radioactive.
Amen.
Thanks, Manna.
See you soon, Manna.
Great to see you.
Good night, John. Mom, anything else? Dave? I think we're clocking out. Thank you. Doreen, Manna. All right. Love you all. Mom, I'll see you in a second. All right, that's it.
Good night.